The celestial commerce station hung in the darkness of space like a massive jewel. It orbited a bright yellow star in a neutral zone where no single species claimed ownership. The station was enormous, with dozens of docking bays that could accommodate ships from hundreds of different worlds. Today, those bays were filled to capacity. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered for the annual Galactic Trade Summit, the most important commercial event in known space. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the viewport of his small transport ship, watching as the station grew larger on his approach. He was a human, which meant he was still a newcomer to this gathering. Earth had only made contact with the galactic community 15 years ago, and humans were still trying to prove themselves worthy of full membership in the major trade alliances. Jake was 32 years old, with dark hair that was starting to show gray at the temples and sharp blue eyes that missed very little. He wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's merchant fleet, with a small patch showing the planet he represented. His co-pilot, Lieutenant Karen Webb, checked their docking clearance on the control panel. She was younger than Jake, maybe 26, with red hair pulled back in a tight bun and freckles across her nose. "We're cleared for Bay 17, she said. "Looks like we're neighbors with a Draxian heavy cruiser and something that translates as a Kellen research vessel." "Great," Jake muttered. "Try not to accidentally insult anyone before we even get to the negotiations." Karen smiled. "That's more your specialty, Captain." The docking procedure went smoothly, and within an hour, Jake and Karen were walking through the main corridor of the station toward the central conference hall. The corridor was wide enough to drive a truck through, with high ceilings that accommodated species of various heights. The walls were made of some kind of metal that seemed to shift colors slightly as they walked past. All around them moved aliens of every imaginable type. A group of Draxians passed on their left, massive beings that stood nearly 8 feet tall with gray rocky skin and 4 arms. To their right, several small pip creatures scurried along, barely 3 feet high, with large eyes and fingers that seemed to have too many joints. Overhead, a skillion floated past, its gas-filled body shimmering with bioluminescence as it propelled itself through the air without any visible means. "Still gets me every time," Karen whispered. "Look at them all," Jake nodded. Even after several trips off-world, he still found himself amazed by the sheer diversity of life in the galaxy. Humans had spent so long thinking they were alone, and now they were surrounded by thousands of intelligent species, each with their own cultures, languages, and ways of thinking. The conference hall was massive, easily the size of a football stadium. Rows of seats curved in a great arc around a central platform where speakers would address the assembly. But what caught Jake's attention was not the architecture. It was the creature standing on the platform. The being was like nothing he had ever seen. It was roughly the size of a large lion, but its body was covered in what looked like crystalline fur that caught the light and split it into rainbow patterns. It had 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows across its face, each one glowing with a soft blue light. Its ears were large and pointed, constantly moving and rotating to catch sounds from every direction. 4 legs supported its body, each one ending in paws that seemed to have retractable claws made of the same crystalline material as its fur. "What is that?" Karen asked quietly. An alien standing nearby turned to look at them. It was a Kelon, a species that looked almost human except for the pale purple skin and the complete absence of hair. The alien was female, dressed in the robes of a scholar. "That is a Kethra," she said in perfect English, though her voice had a musical quality that no human could quite replicate. "You are human, yes? You would not have encountered one before. They are very rare. What does it do?" Jake asked. The Kelon woman smiled. "It reads minds after a fashion. Not thoughts exactly, but intentions. The Kethra can sense when someone is being dishonest or planning something harmful. The Vrexian Consortium uses them to maintain order at important gatherings like this. With so many species trying to make deals, there is always the temptation to cheat or deceive. The Kethra prevents that." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "It can tell if someone is lying?" "More than that. It can sense if someone intends to lie or if they are planning to break an agreement. The creature is telepathic, you see. It reads the surface thoughts and emotional patterns of those around it. Deception creates a very specific pattern that the Kethra has been trained to detect since birth." Karen looked uncomfortable. "That seems like an invasion of privacy." The Kelon woman shrugged. "Perhaps, but it has kept the peace at these summits for over 300 years. No one has successfully cheated at a trade deal while a Kethra was present. It is quite effective. Jake watched as the creature began to move through the hall. It walked with grace, its crystalline fur catching the light with every step. 2 Vrexian handlers walked beside it, tall reptilian beings with green scales and long tails. The Vrexians were one of the most powerful species in the galaxy, and they controlled access to many of the most valuable trade routes. If the Vrexians used this creature to enforce honesty, then everyone had to accept it or give up on doing business. The Kethra approached a group of delegates from the Hakir system. These were insectoid beings with multiple legs and antennae that quivered constantly. The creature stopped in front of them, its 6 eyes focusing on the lead Hakir. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Kethra made a soft chirping sound and moved on. The Hakir delegates visibly relaxed. If it detects deception, what happens? Jake asked. The creature becomes agitated, the Quellan woman explained. It hisses, its fur stands on end, and it will often bare its teeth. The handlers then investigate. Usually the mere presence of the Kethra is enough to keep people honest. No one wants to be exposed as a liar in front of the entire galactic trade community. Jake nodded slowly. He understood the logic, even if it made him uncomfortable. He had nothing to hide, he told himself. He was here to negotiate fairly for Earth's interests. There was no reason to worry about the creature. The Kethra continued its rounds, moving from group to group. Most times it simply observed and moved on. Once or twice it paused longer, studying a particular individual with what seemed like extra attention. In those cases, the handlers would speak quietly with the person being examined, though Jake couldn't hear what was said. Then the creature began moving in their direction. Jake felt Karen tense beside him. "Just stay calm," he said quietly. "We haven't done anything wrong." The Kethra approached, its crystalline paws making soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. Its 6 eyes were fixed on their small group, and Jake could feel the weight of its attention. It was a strange sensation, like being watched by something that could see deeper than just his physical appearance. The creature came closer. 20 feet away. 15 feet. 10 feet. Then it stopped. The Kethra sat down on its haunches, its tail curling around its body. Its ears flattened against its head and it made a low, uncertain sound. But it didn't come any closer. One of the Vrexian handlers, a tall male with dark green scales, urged the creature forward with a gesture. "Come, Shara," he said in a deep, rumbling voice. "Complete your inspection." The Kethra didn't move. It continued to sit, watching Jake with what almost looked like confusion. The second handler, a female Vrexian, tried as well. She made clicking sounds with her tongue and gestured for the creature to advance. "Shara, forward," she commanded. Still the Kethra remained where it was. Its eyes never left Jake, but it showed no signs of aggression. It wasn't hissing or baring its teeth. It simply refused to come closer. Around them, other delegates began to notice. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. The Quellan woman who had been speaking with them stepped back slightly, her purple face showing surprise. "This is most unusual," she said. The male Vrexian handler approached them, leaving his partner with the Kethra. He was even taller up close, at least 7 feet, with golden eyes that studied Jake intently. "Human," he said. "Have you encountered a Kethra before?" "No," Jake replied. "This is my first time at the summit. My first time seeing one of these creatures. Curious." The Vrexian looked back at the Kethra, which still sat motionless. "Shara has never refused an inspection. Even when she detects deception, she approaches to confirm her reading. But with you, she will not come near. Is that bad?" Karen asked nervously. "I do not know," the Vrexian admitted. "In 300 years of records, there is no precedent for this behavior. When the Kethra senses treachery, it becomes aggressive. When it senses honesty, it approaches without hesitation. But this is something else." Jake spread his hands. "I'm not planning anything dishonest. I'm just here to negotiate trade agreements for Earth." "Perhaps," the Vrexian said. "But Shara's reaction suggests something about your species that we do not understand. I must report this to Administrator Zethkor." With that, the Vrexian returned to the Kethra. The female handler coaxed the creature away, and it went willingly enough, though it kept glancing back at Jake as it departed. Administrator Zethkor led Jake through a series of corridors to a private conference room deep within the station. The room was large and circular. with a table in the center surrounded by chairs of various sizes and shapes to accommodate different species. Large windows looked out onto the stars beyond, and the lighting was soft and adjustable. Already waiting in the room were several other Vrexians, the two Kethra handlers and Dr. Lina Hayes, the Quellan xenopsychologist. The Kethra itself sat in one corner, watching Jake with those unsettling 6 eyes as he entered. The creature made no move to approach, maintaining a distance of at least 20 feet. "Please, sit," Zethkor said, gesturing to a human-sized chair. Jake sat down, trying to appear calm even though his mind was racing. Karen had been asked to wait outside, which made him feel even more isolated. He was alone in a room full of aliens who were trying to figure out if humans could somehow trick the galaxy's most reliable lie detector. Zethkor took his own seat across the table. "Let us begin with the facts. The Kethra is a telepathic species that has been bred and trained for over 2,000 years to detect deception. They read the surface thoughts and emotional patterns of sentient beings. When someone harbors dishonest intentions, the Kethra senses a very specific neural signature. This has been tested across 473 different species with a success rate of 98.3%. Jake nodded. "I understand that, but I'm not trying to deceive anyone." "That may be true," Zethkor said. "However, the Kethra's behavior indicates something unusual about human mental patterns. She does not show aggression, which would suggest deception, but she also refuses to approach, which suggests she cannot properly read you at all." One of the other Vrexians, a female with lighter green scales, spoke up. "This is unprecedented. If humans can somehow block or interfere with Kethra readings, it creates a serious problem. How can we negotiate in good faith with a species that cannot be verified for honesty?" "We're not blocking anything," Jake protested. "At least not intentionally. I didn't even know these creatures existed until today." The female Kethra handler, whose name Jake learned was Pelsha, stood up and approached him cautiously. The Kethra Shara watched intently but didn't move from her corner. "May I ask you some questions about human psychology?" Pelsha asked. "Of course. When you think about something, do you think in words, images, or feelings?" Jake considered. "All three, I guess. It depends on what I'm thinking about. And when you make a decision, do you hear your own thoughts as a voice in your mind?" "Sometimes, yes. But sometimes it's more like an instinct or a feeling." Pelsha exchanged a glance with Dr. Lina. "Do you ever think about multiple things at the same time?" "Sure, doesn't everyone?" "No," Pelsha said simply. "Most species have a single stream of consciousness. They think about one thing, make a decision, and move on to the next thought." "You are saying humans can think about several things simultaneously?" Jake frowned. "Well, yeah. Right now I'm thinking about your questions. But I'm also thinking about what's happening to my mission, and I'm wondering if my co-pilot is okay outside. And part of my brain is noting that the Kethra still hasn't moved. And another part is trying to figure out how to fix this situation." Silence filled the room. Several of the Vrexians looked at each other with expressions that might have been surprise or concern. Dr. Lina leaned forward, her purple face animated with interest. "This is remarkable. Captain Morrison, do you often question your own thoughts and decisions?" "Of course," Jake said. "Doesn't everyone?" Again, no. Most species, once they form an intention, commit to it. They may change their minds later based on new information, but in the moment of decision there is clarity. You are describing something quite different. You are describing a mind that constantly questions itself, that holds multiple contradictory ideas at the same time. "That's just being human," Jake said defensively. "We call it being self-aware. We think about our thinking. We question our motives. We imagine different outcomes and different choices." Pelsha walked over to Shara and knelt beside the creature, stroking her crystalline fur. "That may be why she cannot read you," she said softly. "Shara is trained to detect a clear intent to deceive. But if your mind is constantly questioning itself, holding multiple possibilities at once, then there is no clear intent for her to detect. She sees only chaos." "That seems harsh," Jake muttered. "I do not mean it as an insult," Pelsha said. "I mean it literally. To Shara's telepathic senses, a human mind must appear as a storm of contradictions, truth and doubt existing simultaneously, certainty and uncertainty intertwined. She has never encountered anything like it, and it makes her wary." Zethkor drummed his claws on the table. "This presents a significant problem. If we cannot use the Kethra to verify human intentions, how can we trust that humans will honor their agreements? The same way species trusted each other before the Kethra existed, Jake said. Through actions, not telepathy. Judge us by what we do, not by what some creature can or cannot sense in our minds. That is a much slower and riskier process, the female Vrexian official said. The Kethra allows us to establish trust immediately. Without that, negotiations with humans will be fraught with uncertainty. Dr. Lena spoke up. If I may suggest, Administrator, this could be an opportunity rather than a problem. Humans represent a unique form of consciousness that we have not encountered before. Rather than excluding them, we should study them. I would like to propose a series of tests to better understand how human minds work and whether there is a way to verify their honesty through alternative means. Zethkor considered this. Very well. Captain Morrison, you will cooperate with Dr. Lena's research. In the meantime, the human delegation will be restricted from participating in formal negotiations until we can establish proper verification protocols. Jake's jaw tightened. That's not fair. Earth sent me here to represent our interests, and you're benching me because your telepathic cat is confused? It is not personal, Captain. It is a matter of maintaining the integrity of the summit. However, you and your fellow humans will be permitted to observe and to have informal discussions with other delegates. Consider it a probationary period. There was no point in arguing further. Jake nodded stiffly. Understood. Over the next several days, Jake became a subject of intense scientific scrutiny. Dr. Lena conducted a battery of tests, measuring his brain activity while he performed various tasks. She asked him endless questions about human psychology, history, and culture. Other human delegates arrived at the station, including Commander Lisa Garrett from Earth's Diplomatic Corps, and a scientist named Dr. Kevin Shaw who specialized in alien biology. Each human who arrived experienced the same phenomenon. The Kethra refused to approach any of them, maintaining that same cautious distance. Shara would watch them intently, her 6 eyes glowing, but she would not come closer than about 20 feet. The xenopsychology team expanded to include experts from several species. They were fascinated by what they were learning about human cognition, the ability to hold contradictory thoughts, to question one's own beliefs, to simulate alternative scenarios mentally. These were traits that humans took for granted, but that most alien species found bizarre and unsettling. Your species lives in a constant state of internal debate, Dr. Lena explained to Jake during one session. When a Draxian decides to do something, they commit fully. Their mind becomes aligned with that decision. But humans, even when you decide to do something, part of your mind is still arguing against it, imagining what could go wrong, questioning whether it's the right choice. That sounds exhausting when you put it that way, Jake said. It is probably why humans need so much sleep compared to many species, Dr. Lena said with a smile. Your brains are working overtime constantly. Jake laughed despite himself. So we're too neurotic for the Kethra to read. Great. Not neurotic, self-reflective, it is actually quite admirable in a way. Most species achieve certainty through simplicity. Humans achieve it despite complexity. You make decisions even while doubting them. You commit to actions while simultaneously imagining alternatives. It is a remarkable form of consciousness. But remarkable or not, the situation was becoming a political problem. Other delegates at the summit were growing impatient. Some saw humanity's immunity to Kethra detection as an unfair advantage. Others saw it as evidence that humans could not be trusted. Whispers and rumors spread through the station. Jake spent his time observing the summit proceedings from the gallery, taking notes and trying to learn as much as he could about how galactic trade actually worked. Karen accompanied him most days, and they watched as deals were made and broken, as alliances formed and dissolved, as the great machinery of interstellar commerce ground forward. It was during one of these observation sessions that Jake noticed something odd. A delegate from Earth, a man named Klein Harris, was having a private conversation with an alien called Trade Prince Vorn. Vorn was a Scalith, a reptilian species with red scales and yellow eyes. The Scalith Empire controlled several important mining systems, and Trade Prince Vorn was known as a shrewd and sometimes ruthless negotiator. Jake sat in his quarters that night, unable to sleep. The small room was comfortable enough with a bed sized for humans and a viewport that showed the stars outside. But his mind kept returning to that moment in the conference hall when Trade Prince Vorn and Klein Harris had exchanged glances. Maybe he was reading too much into it. Maybe it was just a coincidence, but the more Jake thought about it, the more it bothered him. The Kethra had given an uncertain reading on Trade Prince Vorn, which was unusual. And Klein, a human who couldn't be read by the Kethra at all, had been watching the scene with particular interest. Jake pulled out his datapad and started researching. He learned that Trade Prince Vorn had significant debts from failed mining ventures in his home system. The Scalith noble needed money badly, and the stolen Helian crystals were worth enough to solve his financial problems several times over. So Vorn had motive, but the vault security was sophisticated. It required both physical access and the correct authorization codes. According to the logs, no unauthorized access had occurred. Whoever stole the crystals had legitimate credentials. Jake pulled up the list of people with vault access. There were 37 names, representing a dozen different species. Trade Prince Vorn was on the list. So was Klein Harris. That made sense. Klein was part of the diplomatic corps, and Earth had been storing some trade goods in the vault as part of their initial negotiations. But it still struck Jake as convenient. He decided to do something that might be stupid, but he couldn't let it go. He sent a message to Dr. Lina Hayes asking if they could meet for breakfast the next morning. The Quillan scientist agreed, and they met in one of the station's dining areas. The room served food for multiple species, with different sections offering appropriate nutrition for different biological needs. Jake had a plate of something that approximated eggs and toast, while Dr. Lina had a bowl of what looked like purple grain. "You wanted to discuss something?" Dr. Lina asked. Jake glanced around to make sure no one was listening too closely. "It's about the Kethra and human psychology. You said that humans are hard to read because we think in multiple layers, right? We question ourselves, hold contradictory ideas, simulate different scenarios." "Yes, that is correct." "So what happens if a human actually is planning something dishonest? Would the Kethra still be unable to detect it?" Dr. Lina set down her spoon, her purple face growing serious. "That is an excellent question and a troubling one. In theory, a human who harbored guilty knowledge would still present the same confusing mental pattern to the Kethra. The guilt would be there, but so would doubt, self-justification, alternative scenarios, and all the other noise that characterizes human thought. The Kethra might sense something wrong but be unable to identify it clearly. So a human could be the perfect criminal in a galaxy that relies on telepathic lie detection. I had not thought of it in those terms, but yes. A human criminal would be nearly invisible to the Kethra, not because they are blocking the reading, but because their natural mental state is too complex to parse. "Why do you ask this?" Jake hesitated. He didn't want to make accusations without evidence, but he trusted Dr. Lina, and he needed to talk this through with someone. "I noticed something yesterday during the vault investigation. Trade Prince Vorn got an uncertain reading from the Kethra, right? Not a clear detection of guilt, but something." "Yes, I was there. It was unusual. Normally the Kethra is more definitive. What if Vorn is involved, but he's not the one who actually stole the crystals? What if he had a partner who did the actual theft, someone the Kethra can't read?" Dr. Lina's eyes widened. "You think a human is involved?" "I think it's possible. There's a delegate named Klein Harris. I saw him exchange a look with Trade Prince Vorn yesterday. It might be nothing, but it felt significant. This is a serious accusation." "I know. That's why I'm talking to you first instead of going to Administrator Zethkor. I need to know if I'm crazy or if this is actually possible." Dr. Lina was quiet for a moment, thinking, "It is not only possible, it is logical. If I were planning to commit a crime at this summit, partnering with a human would be an intelligent strategy. The human could access secure areas without fear of telepathic detection. They could harbor guilty knowledge without the Kethra sensing it. It would be the perfect crime. So what do? You need evidence. Suspicion is not enough, especially when you are accusing a member of your own delegation. But if you are correct, this could have serious implications not just for the theft but for humanity's reputation in the galaxy. If it becomes known that a human used their immunity to Kethra detection to commit a crime, it would confirm everyone's worst fears about your species." Jake nodded grimly. He had been thinking the same thing. Over the next 2 days, Jake watched Klein Harris carefully. He made sure to do it subtly, not wanting to alert Klein that he was under observation. Karen helped, though she was skeptical of Jake's theory. He's one of us, Karen said. Why would he risk Earth's reputation for some crystals? Money, Jake said. The same reason anyone commits crimes. Those Helian crystals are worth billions. Maybe Klein has debts, or maybe he's just greedy. People have betrayed their countries for less. They observed Klein's movements around the station. He attended various diplomatic functions, had meetings with different delegates, and generally behaved like any other diplomat. But Jake noticed that Klein had several private conversations with Trade Prince Vorn. Again, this wasn't necessarily suspicious. Diplomats talked to each other, but combined with everything else, it formed a pattern. Jake also noticed that Klein seemed nervous. He kept checking his datapad, looking around as if worried about being watched. Once, Jake saw Klein start toward a restricted area of the station, then stop and change direction as if thinking better of it. The breakthrough came on the third day. Jake was having dinner in the dining area when he overheard two Vrexian security officers talking at a nearby table. They were discussing the vault theft investigation, and one of them mentioned that they had enhanced the security protocols for the vault's computer system. We are checking for any unusual access patterns, one officer said. Even if the logs show authorized access, we can now detect if someone spent too long in the system or accessed files they did not need for their stated purpose. Jake's mind raced. If they enhanced the security, they might be able to detect if someone had tried to erase evidence or alter logs. And if Klein was guilty, he might not know about these new security measures. Jake needed to act fast. He sent an urgent message to Dr. Lina and requested a meeting with Administrator Zethkor. To his surprise, both agreed to see him that evening. They met in the same conference room where Jake had first been questioned about the Kethra. Administrator Zethkor looked tired, his green scales duller than usual. The investigation into the theft was taking a toll on everyone. You said you had information about the Helian crystal theft, Zethkor said without preamble. Jake took a deep breath. I have a theory. I think Trade Prince Vorn is involved, but he had a partner, a human partner, someone who could steal the crystals without the Kethra detecting their guilty intent. Zethkor's golden eyes narrowed. You are accusing one of your own people. I'm accusing someone who happens to be human. His name is Klein Harris. I've observed him having multiple private meetings with Trade Prince Vorn, and he's been acting nervous since the security upgrades were announced. Acting nervous is not evidence of guilt. No. But Dr. Lina can explain why a human would be the perfect partner for this kind of crime. Dr. Lina stepped forward and explained her theory about human psychology and Kethra detection. Zethkor listened carefully, his expression unreadable. This is troubling, he said finally. If what you say is true, it means humans could commit crimes here with impunity. Not with impunity, Jake said. Just without telepathic detection. But we can still be caught through old-fashioned investigation. Actions leave evidence even if thoughts don't. What do you propose? Set a trap. Announce publicly that the vault's security system recorded a unique biosignature during the theft. Make it sound like you have physical evidence that will identify the thief. If Klein is guilty, he'll panic. He'll try to erase his tracks or retrieve whatever evidence he thinks you have. And if he is innocent, you will have falsely accused a colleague and caused diplomatic tensions between Earth and the other human delegates. I know, but I think I'm right. And if I am, we need to catch him before he and Trade Prince Vorn find a way to escape with the crystals. Zethkor considered this for a long moment. Very well. We will try your plan, but Captain Morrison, if you are wrong, there will be consequences. I understand. The next morning, Administrator Zethkor made an announcement to all delegates. He explained that enhanced analysis of the vault's security system had revealed a unique biosignature left at the scene of the theft. The technical details were vague, but the implication was clear. They had physical evidence that would identify the thief. Jake watched Klein Harris when the announcement was made. For just a moment, the diplomat's composed expression slipped. His face went pale and his hand tightened on his datapad. Then he recovered, his professional mask sliding back into place. The capture of Klein Harris and Trade Prince Vorn sent shockwaves through the Celestial Commerce Station. Delegates who had been skeptical of humanity were forced to reconsider their assumptions. Others saw the incident as proof that humans were dangerous precisely because they couldn't be read by the Kethra. The debate raged in informal gatherings and formal sessions alike. Jake found himself at the center of this storm. Some species praised him for his integrity. Others remained suspicious, arguing that if one human could exploit their immunity to telepathic detection, others could do the same. The question everyone wanted answered was simple. How could the galaxy trust humans when the most reliable method of verifying honesty didn't work on them? 3 days after the arrests, Dr. Lina Hayes requested a private meeting with Jake. They met in her laboratory, a cluttered space filled with screens displaying brain scans and psychological profiles from dozens of species. The Quellan scientist looked excited, her purple skin seeming to glow with enthusiasm. "I have been studying the data from all the tests we conducted on you and the other humans," she said, pulling up charts and graphs on her main screen. "And I believe I finally understand why the Kethra cannot read your species." Jake sat down in a chair that was slightly too small for him. "I thought we already figured that out. Humans think in too many layers. Yes, but I did not fully understand what that meant until now. Let me show you something." She pulled up a brain scan. "This is a Draxian thinking about whether to accept a trade deal. See how the neural activity is focused? There is deliberation, yes, but it follows a clear path. The Draxian considers the benefits, considers the drawbacks, and then makes a decision. Once the decision is made, the neural pattern becomes stable and committed." She switched to another scan. "Now look at this. This is your brain activity when I asked you the same hypothetical question about a trade deal." Jake leaned forward. The scan looked completely different. Instead of focused activity moving toward a conclusion, there were multiple areas lighting up simultaneously, creating a complex web of neural connections. "You were not just thinking about the trade deal," Dr. Lina explained. "You were simultaneously considering the deal, imagining what could go wrong, questioning whether your initial reaction was rational, remembering similar situations from your past, wondering if you were being manipulated, and evaluating your own thought process, all at the same time, and that sounds exhausting. It is remarkable. Do you see these patterns here?" She pointed to specific areas of the scan. "This is you literally arguing with yourself. One part of your brain is advocating for the deal, while another part is arguing against it. And this pattern here, this is you being aware that you are doing this, thinking about your thinking." Jake studied the scans. "So every human brain works like this?" "Every human we have tested, yes. Some more than others. But the basic pattern is consistent. You are a species that evolved with extreme self-awareness. You do not simply have thoughts, you observe your thoughts. You do not simply make decisions, you question your decisions even as you make them. Why, though? Why would we evolve to be so complicated?" Dr. Lina pulled up another screen, this one showing information about Earth's history. "I have been studying your planet's development. Humans evolved in an environment with no natural predators that could be defeated through simple strength. Instead, your greatest threat was other humans. You were competing against beings exactly as intelligent as yourselves, who could predict your actions because they thought like you." She highlighted several passages from human history texts. "Your species developed complex social structures, alliances, betrayals, cooperation, and competition all happening simultaneously. To survive in that environment, you needed to predict what others would do, and the best way to predict others is to simulate their thinking in your own mind. So we learned to model other people's thoughts," Jake said slowly, beginning to understand. "Yes. But here is the crucial part. To model someone else's thinking, you must be able to separate your own thoughts from the simulation. You must think, what would I do? And also, what would they do? At the same time. Over millions of years, this created a species that naturally maintains multiple parallel thought processes." Dr. Lina pulled up a comparison chart. "Most species evolved to have a unified sense of self, a single voice making decisions. Humans evolved to have multiple voices constantly debating and questioning. You have, in essence, a built-in simulation of other minds running inside your own mind. That's why we can lie so well," Jake realized. "We're not just thinking about the truth. We're also thinking about what the other person expects to hear, what they want to believe, how they'll react to different stories. We can hold the truth and the lie in our heads at the same time." "Exactly. And this is why the Kethra cannot read you. She was trained to detect a clear intent to deceive, a definitive pattern that says this being is lying. But when she reads a human, she encounters a mind that is simultaneously truthful and deceptive, confident and uncertain, committed and questioning. There is no clear signal to detect." Jake leaned back in his chair, absorbing this information. "So we're not special because we're better at lying. We're special because we're better at understanding ourselves. In a way, yes. You are perhaps the most psychologically sophisticated species we have encountered, not the most intelligent in terms of raw processing power. That honor belongs to the Quellan. She smiled slightly, but in terms of self-awareness and social modeling, humans are extraordinary. Great. So how does this help the summit? How do we convince everyone that humans can be trusted if the Kethra can't read us? Dr. Lina's expression grew more serious. That is the difficult question. I have been discussing this with Administrator Zethkor and the other xenopsychologists. We believe the answer lies in understanding what the Kethra actually detects. She pulled up schematics of Kethra neurology. The Kethra does not read minds in the way most people think. She does not hear your thoughts like words. Instead, she senses emotional and intentional states. When someone plans to deceive, their emotional state has a specific signature: anxiety about being caught, satisfaction at fooling others, focus on maintaining a false story. The Kethra detects this signature. But humans have all those emotions even when we're telling the truth, Jake said. We're anxious about being believed, we hope we're explaining things well, we're focused on how our words are being received. Precisely. Your emotional state when telling the truth is similar to other species' emotional state when lying. You are naturally in a state of uncertainty and self-monitoring. This is why Klein Harris was able to hide his guilt from the Kethra. His guilty anxiety blended with his natural human anxiety. His focus on maintaining his false story blended with the human tendency to overthink every social interaction. Jake rubbed his temples. So you're saying humans are naturally suspicious-looking to telepaths, in a manner of speaking. But here's what I find fascinating. This same trait that makes you unreadable to the Kethra is also what made you catch the criminal. You noticed things others missed because you are constantly modeling other people's behavior. You saw Klein's nervousness and recognized it as different from normal human anxiety. You caught the glance between him and Trade Prince Vorn because you are always watching for social cues. I just thought I was being paranoid. Paranoia is just threat detection without trust. What you were doing was sophisticated social analysis. You were running simulations in your mind. What would an innocent person do? What would a guilty person do? How do Klein's actions match these models? And this is what humans do naturally all the time, usually without even realizing it. Jake thought about his own thought processes over the past week. Dr. Lina was right. He hadn't just observed Klein's behavior. He had been constantly imagining different explanations, testing scenarios, questioning his own assumptions. It was exhausting, but it was also what had led him to the truth. So the galaxy needs to understand that human complexity is not a threat, it's just a different way of thinking. Yes, but understanding is not the same as trusting. Administrator Zethkor is preparing new protocols for dealing with human delegates. Since the Kethra cannot verify your intentions telepathically, other measures must be put in place. Like what? Behavioral analysis, psychological profiling, lie detector tests that measure physical responses rather than mental states, and, most importantly, a longer probationary period where humans prove their trustworthiness through actions, rather than telepathic verification. That seems like we're being treated as second-class members of the galactic community. Dr. Lina gave him a sympathetic look. I understand your frustration. But consider the perspective of other species. They have relied on the Kethra for centuries to maintain peace and honest trade. Suddenly, they encounter a species that is immune to this verification. From their perspective, it is as if you are all wearing masks that cannot be removed. It will take time for them to become comfortable with that. Jake knew she was right, even if he didn't like it. What about the Kethra herself? Is she still afraid of us? Pelsha has been working with Shara, trying to help her adjust to human. The final days of the Galactic Trade Summit approached, and the atmosphere on Celestial Commerce Station had changed dramatically. What began as a crisis of trust had evolved into something more nuanced. The revelation about human psychology, combined with Jake's role in catching the thieves, had forced the galactic community to reconsider their assumptions about both humans and their own verification methods. Administrator Zethkor called a special session to address the human question. The conference hall was packed with delegates from hundreds of worlds, all curious to hear how the Vrexian consortium would handle this unprecedented situation. Jake sat in the human section alongside Commander Lisa Garrett, Dr. Kevin Shaw, Karen Webb, and a dozen other Earth representatives. He felt nervous knowing that whatever was decided today would shape humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. Zethkor took the platform, his imposing figure commanding immediate silence. "We have spent these past weeks grappling with a unique challenge," he began. "The humans present a paradox. They are immune to our most trusted method of verifying honesty, yet one of them demonstrated profound integrity by exposing a criminal within his own delegation. This has forced us to examine not just humans, but our own systems and assumptions." The administrator gestured to where Pelshaw stood with Shara. The Kethra sat calmly, her crystalline fur gleaming, her 6 eyes watching the crowd. "For centuries we have relied on the Kethra to maintain peace and honest dealing at these summits. The creatures have served us well, but the arrival of humans has revealed a limitation we did not know existed. The Kethra cannot read a species whose minds operate on multiple parallel levels simultaneously." Murmurs ran through the hall. Some aliens nodded in agreement, while others still looked skeptical. "This has led to extensive research by our xenopsychology teams," Zethkor continued. "Dr. Lina Hayes of Quillon has prepared a presentation on human cognition that I believe all delegates should hear." Dr. Lina took the platform, her purple skin looking slightly darker under the bright lights. She launched into an explanation of human psychology, using the same brain scans and comparisons she had shown Jake. She explained how humans evolved to model other minds, how they think in contradictions, how they maintain multiple perspectives simultaneously. "Humans are not blocking the Kethra," she concluded. "They are simply too complex for the current method of telepathic verification. Their minds are storms of possibility, constantly questioning and simulating. This makes them appear chaotic to a creature trained to detect clear intention." A delegate from the Hacker system raised one of their many arms. "Does this not make humans dangerous? If they can hide their true intentions, how can we ever trust them?" Dr. Lina smiled. "That is the question everyone is asking, but I would like to reframe it. Humans cannot hide their true intentions because they do not have singular true intentions. They have multiple competing intentions that they balance constantly. When a human makes a promise, part of their mind is already questioning whether they can keep it, imagining scenarios where they might fail, and planning backup options. This appears dishonest to the Kethra, but it is actually a more sophisticated form of honesty." "Sophisticated lying is still lying," another delegate called out. "No." Jake found himself standing up, speaking before he fully thought it through. All eyes turned to him. "It's not lying. It's being realistic about the future. When I promise to do something, I mean it. But I also know that circumstances can change, that I might encounter obstacles, that I might make mistakes. So yes, part of my mind is thinking about what could go wrong. Does that make me a liar? Or does it make me someone who takes promises seriously enough to consider all the ways they might be challenged?" Silence fell over the hall. Jake remained standing, his heart pounding. He had just contradicted a delegate in front of the entire galactic community. But he couldn't let the characterization of humans as inherently dishonest go unchallenged. Administrator Zethkor looked at him with an expression that might have been approval. "Captain Morrison raises an important point. The question is not whether humans think differently, but whether that difference is compatible with honest trade and cooperation. And the answer," Dr. Lina added, "is that it must be. Because humans have been cooperating with each other for thousands of years despite all being unreadable to telepaths. They have built civilizations, formed alliances, and created systems of trust without any telepathic verification. They are proof that trust can exist without mind reading." Trade Minister Dalvin of the Draxian Confederacy stood up. Dalvin was one of the most influential delegates at the summit, and his opinion carried significant weight. "The Draxian Confederacy has been observing the humans carefully. We have had preliminary trade discussions with them, and I must say their complexity is actually an advantage in negotiation." This caused surprised reactions throughout the hall. Dalvin continued, "Humans think through problems more thoroughly than most species. They anticipate obstacles and plan contingencies. Yes, they are difficult to read, but they are also reliable partners because they have already considered all the ways an agreement might fail and have prepared solutions. We propose that humans be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Trade Consortium, with a review period of 5 standard years." More murmurs, some approving, some concerned. Other influential delegates began to speak. Some supported the Draxian position, While others wanted stricter limitations on human participation, the debate continued for hours. During a break, Jake stepped outside the conference hall for some air. He found himself at a viewing platform that looked out onto the stars. The galaxy stretched before him, vast and full of possibilities. Footsteps approached from behind. Jake turned to see Pelshaw and Shara. The Kethra handler had the creature on a lead, though it seemed unnecessary. Shara walked calmly beside her. "Captain Morrison," Pelshaw said, "may we join you?" Of course. They stood together in silence for a moment. Jake noticed that Shara was watching him, but without the obvious fear she had shown during their first encounter. The creature maintained her distance about 15 feet away, but her posture was relaxed. "She is learning to accept your presence," Pelshaw said. "It will never be comfortable for her, not the way it is with other species. But she understands now that your complexity is not a threat. I wish I could explain to her that we're not trying to be difficult. In a way, you already have. Your actions throughout this summit have demonstrated human character more clearly than any telepathic reading could. You pursued truth even when it was inconvenient. You protected others even at cost to yourself. These are things Shara can understand, even if she cannot read your specific thoughts." Jake knelt down, still maintaining what he judged to be a comfortable distance for the Kethra. "Hey, Shara," he said softly. "I know we're confusing. We confuse ourselves most of the time, but we're trying to be good neighbors in this galaxy." The Kethra tilted her head, 6 eyes blinking in sequence. Then slowly, deliberately, she took 3 steps forward. It was only about 6 feet, still maintaining significant distance, but it was progress. Pelshaw made a small sound of surprise. In all our training sessions, she has never voluntarily approached a human before. "This is significant. What changed?" Jake asked. "Perhaps she has learned to see past the chaos of human thought to the intention beneath. Or perhaps she simply recognizes that some confusion is acceptable if the underlying character is sound. Either way, it is progress." They stood there for a while longer, human and alien and telepathic creature watching the stars together. It felt like a moment of understanding, imperfect but real. When the summit reconvened, Administrator Zethkor announced the decision. "After extensive deliberation, the Galactic Trade Consortium has voted to grant humanity provisional membership. Humans will be subject to enhanced monitoring and verification procedures that do not rely on telepathic detection. These procedures will include behavioral analysis, transaction auditing, and a system of references from other species they conduct business with." He paused, his golden eyes scanning the hall. "Additionally, we acknowledge that our reliance on the Kethra had made us complacent. We had forgotten that trust is built through actions over time, not just through telepathic verification in a moment. The human situation has reminded us of this fundamental truth. Therefore, all species will now be subject to enhanced conventional oversight, not just humans. This will make our trading system more robust and less vulnerable to the kind of exploitation we witnessed with Trade Prince Vorn and the human criminal." Jake felt relief wash over him. It wasn't perfect. Humanity would still face more scrutiny than other species, but it was fair, and it opened the door to full membership in the future. Commander Lisa Garrett leaned over and whispered, "You did good, Jake. Earth will be grateful." The summit concluded 2 days later with a formal ceremony. New trade agreements were signed, alliances were renewed, and humanity officially entered the galactic economy. Jake stood with the other human delegates as they received their credentials, documents that would allow Earth merchants to trade freely throughout the consortium's territory. On the